A general content warning. This story contains adult themes to include blood, violence, possible rape triggers, along with real-life situations designed or circumstances that are made to make you feel uneasy. Hello, hello! Welcome back to Seeking Horror. Our second short hits close to home for me. It relates to my own personal hell. The airport. Having been in the United States Navy for 10 years at this point, you'd think I'd be past all the travel, but truth be told, I hate everything from the long waits to the crowds of travelers swarming every square inch of the place. Luckily, I've never experienced anything quite like Jeremiah has. Attention, attention please. Multiple flight delays posted in response to increasing reports of severe weather. Please confirm flight status at your nearest monitor, and on behalf of the Tuscan International staff, we apologize for any inconveniences. Lord of all places to trap me. Jeremiah, a southern-born and bred God-fearing white-collar, swirled his amber medicine. He hated airports, but they hadn't been nearly as bad since the COVID-19 pandemic hit. Damn near abandoned in some parts, actually. $10 for a damn swallow. I'll take that check, Fred. A greasy man who looked a bit too young to be serving at a bar stepped forward, placing a black folded tab book in front of him. On second thought, hit me one more time. A large cube of ice and a shot pour of bourbon saw Jeremiah content. Mother Nature came a-callin', and he headed to take care of her beckoning. But boy, had he wished he didn't. Heading into the bathroom, things seemed ordinary enough. It was the kind where the restroom split. One side of the wall presented the sinks, the other the toilet. There was a single man 4 urinals down. He couldn't help but notice the tattoos covering every square inch of his arms. Normally, it's common courtesy to keep your eyes forward when using the urinals. Maybe as a child, you'd pay a glance and throw a joke at your friend, but men didn't do this in public restrooms. It appeared the man was finishing up as he heard a flush. Jeremiah went about his business, but couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were burrowing into him. A quick side-eye glance revealed his fears. The man stood no more than a foot away, staring directly at him. He heard a soft, pained moan coming from somewhere, barely audible over the sound of the loud buzzing the fluorescent lights were giving off. The man reached out and flushed his toilet, staring him directly in the eyes. Jeremiah quickly zipped his pants, not quite finished urinating, and made to the exit. He didn't know what was happening in that toilet stall, and he didn't care. He knew better than to scream. He turned the corner, hoping to God that hoodlum didn't follow. He bumped into someone else walking into the bathroom and was taken off his feet. He looked up to see a well-muscled, heavily tattooed man in a wife-beater carrying an empty duffel bag. The words, Lagara, tattooed just beneath his neck. Jeremiah didn't speak Spanish, but he knew he stumbled into some serious shit. His brain told him to move, get out, but the second he tried to pick himself up, a large boot caught him in the face. He sprawled across the floor dazed. The other man was on top of him in an instant. He saw his own blood pooling on the floor, and finally, nothing, as a second sharp pain stuck into his neck. The next few hours were hell. He tried yelling, but his body felt like a sack of broken bricks. The only thing to escape, a pathetic moan. Crushed, squeezed tightly on all sides, he could only surmise he was in one of those duffel bags, packed with something tightly wrapped around his head, making every breath agonizing. They were moving, but to where? He had no idea. He could hear the sounds of planes taking off. The bag was starting to grow wet. They must have been outside. He heard men speaking in Spanish, and then a sensation of free fall with a hard thump on his left side sent him into a daze. They were loading him up. What were they going to do with him? Was that other person here too? It wasn't long after takeoff that it became painfully obvious the air was becoming thin. The cargo for luggage wasn't meant for living creatures. Time passed, and Jeremiah felt he was conscious again. They were still in flight as he heard the roar of the plane's engines. Squirming, he managed nothing more than to wear himself out, and quietly waited, crushed between the other cargo for what felt like hours. He felt filthy, and could smell the sickening stench of his own body. But what else could he do trapped the way he was? His sides hurt. There was nothing he could do to reposition himself. He felt pressure moving along the bag. Someone was opening it. The hands began pulling the mask free, and he took in a much-needed breath of air. Regardless of the foul odor, it felt as if his lungs took in a mountain breeze. In an agonizing effort, he sat up. and looked to his savior, a Caucasian woman with curly straw hair now matted with blood. Her clothes were mostly covered in blood and fluid as was his own. "Were you the one they had at Tuscan?" He barely managed to croak out. The woman began speaking softly in some harsh European language. German or Russian, maybe? She put a finger to her lips and began rifling through the luggage. They both found a fresh change of clothes. "Hopefully we can find a weapon. I'm Jeremiah, by the way." The woman looked back to him. "Lara," and nodded before continuing to rifle through other belongings. They didn't manage to find much outside of a usual travel bag. He took a straight razor, and she found a small screwdriver from a computer bag. The sound of the landing gears manifested a foreboding relief. They should be fine. The aircrew will find them once they land. Another half-hour passed before the cargo bays opened. 2 crew members dressed in dark gray with brandless ball caps piled the first of the luggage into the cars. Jeremiah stood just out of sight with Laura. She pushed past him and immediately ran out and began speaking to the man in her foreign tongue. It was clear he couldn't understand her. She pointed back to the cargo hold, where he still concealed himself just out of sight. The 2 goons from the airport approached from behind her and began binding Laura, placing a large sack over her head and delivering a haymaker, knocking her flat. The 2 staff members did nothing save watch the merciless display. A stack of bills passed hands, and the crew pointed to the back. Jeremiah didn't speak Spanish, but he knew he'd been pointed out. He placed his hands behind his back, thumbing the straight razor, and stepped out. The larger one approached, a sack in hand. As soon as he came within an arm's distance, Jeremiah slashed out, catching the cheek of his captor, eliciting a yell of pain and anger. He went for a follow-up, but easily had been stopped as a large hand grabbed his wrist and yanked him upward off of his feet. He tried to punch and kick, but was too weak to deliver anything enough to elicit his escape. Within seconds, the other had drugged him, and the cycle continued. The next time the sack came off of his head, he was chained to a badly damaged and well-graffitied cement wall. He was too weak to do much of anything. He couldn't remember much of anything, actually. It was as if a haze overtook him. At first he thought he heard screaming, but could never reorient himself enough to distinguish them. Injections became frequent. He didn't know what he was being used for. His private areas hurt him often. The injections tended to stave off the pain, however. They were his only relief now. He found himself craving every dose. Looking to the walls around him, he saw all sorts of writings carved into it, a plethora of languages from all over the world. He rested a final time on one as an overwhelming sensation of falling took him. "Por favor, puedes ayudarme?" With the word Mara Salvatrucha lightly scratched out just below it.